From Dirt to Diamonds, A Love Worth Fighting For. Chapter 1. The Foreclosure Notice. The Montana sunrise painted the wheat fields golden as Jack Morrison walked the perimeter of his 300-acre organic farm. At 52, his weathered hands told the story of decades working the land, first alongside his father, then with his beloved wife Sarah, and now alone with their daughter Emma. The morning peace shattered when he spotted the certified mail truck disappearing down the gravel road. Jack's stomach dropped. Certified mail never brought good news. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, Emma sat at the worn wooden table, college brochures spread before her like promises of escape. Her acceptance letter to Stanford lay prominently displayed, a dream that seemed increasingly impossible. "Dad." Emma's voice carried the weight of 17 years watching her father sacrifice everything for their small family. The mail came. Jack's calloused fingers trembled slightly as he opened the envelope from First National Bank. The words blurred together: final notice, foreclosure proceedings, 60 days. "How much?" Emma asked quietly. "200,000. Jack's voice was steady, but Emma saw the defeat creeping into his eyes. "The drought last year, the equipment repairs. I thought the organic certification would help, but..." Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. "I'm not going to Stanford. I'll get a job in town, help you fight this." "Absolutely not." Jack's military training kicked in his voice, carrying the authority that had once commanded respect in Afghanistan. "You're going to college. This farm? Maybe it's time to let it go." But Emma saw through her father's facade. This wasn't just land, it was where her mother had planted her garden, where family memories lived in every fence post and barn beam. Losing it would destroy him. "There has to be another way," she whispered. Chapter 2. The Acquisition Target. 2,000 miles away in Manhattan. Victoria Sterling stood before floor-to-ceiling windows on the 42nd floor of the Sterling Financial Building. The city sprawled beneath her like a conquered territory, each glittering light representing wealth she'd helped create or destroy. At 48, Victoria commanded respect in rooms where men twice her age still struggled for recognition. Her reputation for turning failing agricultural investments into profitable ventures had earned her the nickname the Harvest Queen, though never to her face. "The Morrison property came through legal," announced Marcus Hayes as he entered her corner office. Victoria's business partner carried himself with practiced confidence, his silver hair and expensive suit projecting success. Perfect for the Midwest expansion. Small organic farm owner behind on payments, prime location for our agribusiness clients. And Victoria studied the file. Morrison Organic Farm, 300 acres of debt-ridden land in Willowbrook, Montana. Standard acquisition: buy cheap, consolidate with neighboring properties, sell to corporate farming operations at massive profit. "Owner's name?" she asked absently, already mentally calculating returns. "Jack Morrison, widower, one daughter, military background, stubborn type, been farming that land for 30 years. Something in Marcus's tone made Victoria look up. She'd learned to read people like financial statements, and Marcus was hiding something. "What aren't you telling me?" Marcus shrugged. "Nothing relevant. Just maybe send Richardson to handle this one. No need for executive involvement." Victoria's instinct was sharpened. In 25 years building her empire, she'd learned that when men suggested she avoid something, it usually meant she needed to handle it personally. "Clear my schedule for next week. I'm going to Montana." "Victoria, that's not necessary. It's a routine acquisition." "Since when do you decide what's necessary for my company?" Her voice carried the ice that had frozen countless hostile takeovers. "I'll handle Morrison personally." As Marcus left, Victoria returned to the window. She'd grown up on a failing farm in Iowa, watching her parents lose everything to banks and corporations. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd become the very predator that had destroyed her childhood. But sentiment was a luxury she couldn't afford. Business was business. Chapter 3. First Contact. The black SUV looked as out of place in Willowbrook as a yacht in a wheat field. Victoria had driven straight from the regional airport, her Manhattan attire drawing stares from locals outside Murphy's General Store. She'd expected corporate farming operations, not the pristine beauty of Morrison Organic Farm. The property showed signs of financial strain, peeling paint on the barn, aging equipment, but the land itself was immaculately maintained. Rows of vegetables grew in perfect lines. Fruit trees heavy with harvest. Wildflowers bordering the fields in a way that spoke of someone who farmed with love, not just profit. Jack emerged from the barn as she parked, and Victoria felt an unexpected flutter of something. He wasn't what she'd imagined. Tall and lean, with silver threading through dark hair, he moved with quiet confidence. His work clothes couldn't hide the military bearing, the way he assessed potential threats. When their eyes met across the farmyard, Victoria felt a recognition that went deeper than professional interest. "Ms. Sterling, I presume?" Jack's voice carried a hint of wariness. Word traveled fast in small towns. "Heard you were coming." "Mr. Morrison." Victoria extended her hand, surprised by the calluses that told stories her manicured fingers never could. "I wanted to discuss your situation. Come to make an offer." Emma appeared from the house, and Victoria was struck by the fierce protectiveness in the teenager's eyes. This girl would fight for her father with everything she had. "I came to understand the property," Victoria replied carefully. "Sometimes there are solutions that work for everyone." Jack studied her for a long moment. "Coffee's on. Might as well talk inside." The farmhouse kitchen was everything Victoria's sterile penthouse wasn't warm lived in, full of family photos and the lingering scent of this morning's bacon. Sarah's presence was everywhere, her reading glasses on the counter, her favorite coffee mug in the dish drain, the garden visible through the window she'd tended until cancer stole her strength. "You're not what I expected," Jack said, as he poured coffee into chipped but clean mugs. "What did you expect?" "Corporate shark in a $1,000 suit ready to strip our bones clean." Victoria glanced down at her outfit. The suit probably cost more than Jack made in a month. "The suit's $1,200, and I don't strip bones. I find solutions." Despite everything, Jack almost smiled. "Honest about the price, at least." Emma sat protectively beside her father. "What kind of solutions?" Victoria opened her briefcase, revealing carefully prepared documents. "Sterling Financial specializes in agricultural investments. We could restructure your debt, proving capital for improvements, help you expand operations." In exchange for what? Jack's military training made him suspicious of offers that seemed too good. "Partnership. Sterling Financial becomes a minority investor. You retain majority ownership and control." It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Emma leaned forward. "What's the catch?" Victoria hesitated. Honesty wasn't her usual strategy in acquisitions, but something about this kitchen, these people demanded truth. "The catch is that if the partnership fails, Sterling Financial has first right of refusal on the property. And if we refuse your partnership offer, then the bank forecloses in 60 days and we buy at auction for probably half what the land's worth." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Emma stood abruptly. "So you're offering to help us? Or you'll destroy us?" "Very generous." "Emma," Jack warned, but his daughter was past politeness. "She's trying to steal our home, Dad. At least be honest about it, lady." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd been called worse in boardrooms, but somehow this teenager's accusation stung. "I'm offering you options. That's more than most in my position would do." "Because you're so charitable." Emma's voice dripped sarcasm. "Because I know what it's like to lose a farm." The words escaped before Victoria could stop them. Jack set down his coffee mug. "You grew up on a farm. Iowa. Lost it when I was 16. Bank foreclosed, family scattered." Victoria stood, her professional armor sliding back into place. "I'll give you 48 hours to consider the partnership offer. After that, I can't guarantee the same terms." She headed for the door, but Jack's voice stopped her. "Miss Sterling, thank you for being straight with us." Victoria nodded curtly and left, but she couldn't shake the image of Jack's weathered hands or Emma's fierce loyalty. In her car, she sat for a moment, staring at the farmhouse where warm light spilled from kitchen windows. She'd lied about one thing. The partnership offer wasn't standard. She'd structured it to be far more favorable to the Morrisons than her board would approve. And she had no idea why. Chapter 4, Unlikely Allies. That evening, Jack walked the fields as he always did when facing impossible decisions. The wheat rustled in the Montana breeze, and he could almost hear Sarah's voice. "Follow your heart, but use your head." Emma found him by the old oak tree where he'd proposed to her mother 30 years ago. "She's not what I expected either," Emma said quietly. "No, she isn't. You're actually considering her offer." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Your college fund is gone, Em. Used it to keep the farm running this year. If we lose everything, Then we start over. Together. You shouldn't have to start over. You should get to go to Stanford live your life. Emma studied her father's profile in the moonlight. What if there's another way? What if we could make her offer work, but on our terms? What do you mean by she knows farming? Real farming, not just corporate agriculture. Did you see how she looked at Mom's garden? She knew what she was seeing. Jack had noticed. Victoria Sterling might wear expensive suits now, but she'd recognize the careful planning in Sarah's herb garden, the way native wildflowers were integrated to support beneficial insects. You think she can be trusted? I think she's more complicated than she wants us to believe, Emma said. And I think you affect her more than she expected. Jack turned to his perceptive daughter. What makes you say that? Dad, she offered you a deal that probably violates her fiduciary responsibility to her investors. She's either going soft, or you got to her. Chapter 5, The Investigation. Meanwhile, Victoria sat in her hotel room at the Willowbrook Inn, laptop open to Morrison Organic Farms financials. The numbers told a story of gradual decline, not mismanagement, but a series of natural disasters and bad luck that would have broken most farms years ago. Jack Morrison had somehow kept operating through drought equipment failures and his wife's medical bills. The man was either incredibly stubborn or incredibly skilled. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. How did it go? It's complicated. It's a simple acquisition, Victoria. Buy low, sell high. Don't let some sob story cloud your judgment. Something in Marcus's urgency bothered her. Why are you so invested in this particular property? I'm not. I'm invested in our company's profitability. This expansion into agricultural real estate was your idea, I remember. Victoria closed the laptop. I'll handle Morrison my way. After hanging up, she stared out at the small town's main street. A few locals walked between the diner and the general store, everyone knowing everyone else's business. It was the kind of community she'd fled at 18, swearing never to return to the poverty and limitations of rural life. So why did it feel like coming home? Her laptop chimed with an encrypted message, her private investigator's preliminary report on Jack Morrison. What she read made her blood run cold. Subject military record classified, but sources confirm Special Forces deployment Afghanistan. 3 tours, decorated veteran. Wife died 8 years ago. Cancer medical bills exceeded $400K. Subject mortgage farm to pay for experimental treatments. Financial struggles began then, not from poor management, but it was the final paragraph that made her hands tremble. Subject's wife, Sarah Morrison, was Sarah Caldwell before marriage, originally from Iowa. Parents lost family farm to foreclosure in 1983. Bank sold to agricultural investment firm Sterling Holdings' predecessor company to Sterling Financial Group. Records show foreclosure executed by Marcus Hayes, then junior partner. Victoria stared at the screen, the implications crashing over her. Marcus had been involved in foreclosing on Sarah's family farm 40 years ago. Now he was pushing Victoria to foreclose on Jack's farm, the farm where Sarah had built her life after losing everything as a child. It couldn't be coincidence. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Elena Vasquez, manager of First National Bank. Ms. Sterling, I know it's late, but I wanted to speak with you about the Morrison situation. I'm listening. Jack Morrison he's a good man. This town has rallied around his family since Sarah died. If there's any way to work something out. Ms. Vasquez, are you calling me in your professional capacity, Fadi, or personal capacity? A pause, a pause. Both. Jack he means a lot to this community, to me. Victoria detected the undertone. Elena Vasquez cared about Jack Morrison in more than a neighborly way. The realization brought an unexpected stab of jealousy impossible. I appreciate your call. I'll consider all options. After hanging up, Victoria poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle she'd brought from New York and tried to process the evening's revelations. Marcus was hiding his connection to the Morrison family. Elena Vasquez was clearly in love with Jack, and Victoria herself was developing feelings that had no place in a business transaction. She opened her laptop and began typing an encrypted message to her most trusted investigator. Urgent need complete background on Marcus Hayes, focus on 1980s agricultural investments in Iowa and Montana. Also need full history of Sterling Holdings foreclosure activities during that period. Whatever game Marcus was playing, Victoria intended to uncover it, and if he was using her to settle old scores or cover up past mistakes, she would destroy him. But first she needed to understand why Jack Morrison made her feel things she'd spent 25 years learning to suppress. Chapter 6. Deepening Mystery. The next morning brought revelations that would change everything. Victoria's investigator had worked through the night, and the report waiting in her encrypted inbox painted a picture of deliberate manipulation spanning decades. Marcus Hayes joined at Sterling Holdings in 1979, specializing in agricultural foreclosures. Between 1980 to 1985, executed 47 farm foreclosures across Iowa, Montana, and Wyoming. Pattern suggests targeting specific properties for undisclosed reasons. Sarah Caldwell Family Farm. Caldwell Organic Produce forecloses 1983 property immediately sold to agricultural development firm for 300% profit. Development firm traced to shell company owned by Hayes. Current Morrison situation follows identical pattern. Hayes specifically requested Morrison property be added to acquisition list despite minimal profit potential, suggests personal rather than business motivation. Victoria felt sick. Marcus hadn't just been involved in Sarah's family losing their farm. He'd orchestrated it, profited from it, and was now trying to complete the circle by destroying the life Sarah had built afterward. Her phone rang. Jack Morrison. "Miss Sterling, I've been thinking about your offer." "I'm glad you called. I'd like to discuss some modifications." "Actually, I was hoping you might join us for dinner tonight. Emma's making her famous pot roast, and I thought, well, if we're going to be partners, maybe we should get to know each other as people, not just business adversaries." The invitation was so unexpected, so genuine, that Victoria found herself agreeing before her business instincts could object. "I'd like that. 7 o'clock, and Ms. Sterling dressed casual. You'll be helping with chores if Emma has her way." After hanging up, Victoria realized she was smiling. When was the last time someone had invited her to dinner for any reason other than business? When had she last done farm chores? More importantly, when had she last looked forward to an evening that wouldn't involve profit margins or hostile takeovers? She had 6 hours to figure out how to tell Jack Morrison that her business partner had destroyed his wife's family and that she might be falling for a man she was supposed to be dispossessing. Business was supposed to be simple. This was becoming anything but simple. Chapter 7. Dinner and Discoveries. Victoria arrived at Morrison Farm at exactly 7 o'clock carrying a bottle of wine that had cost more than most people's weekly groceries. She traded her business attire for jeans and a simple blouse, the most casual clothes she owned, but still felt overdressed for farmhouse dinner. Emma answered the door with a suspicious expression that had become her default around Victoria. "Nice wine. Trying to get Dad drunk so he'll sign bad contracts." "Emma," Jack emerged from the kitchen dish towel over his shoulder, looking more relaxed than Victoria had seen him. "Sorry, she's been reading too many business magazines." "Actually, I'm impressed by her skepticism," Victoria replied. "Never trust anyone who brings expensive wine to a business meeting." Emma's eyebrows rose. "So you're admitting this is a business meeting?" "No, I'm admitting I don't know how to do anything else." The honesty in Victoria's voice seemed to surprise everyone, including herself. Jack studied her face for a moment. "Well, then it's time you learn it." Emma put our guest to work setting the table. "Victoria, hope you don't mind getting your hands dirty." The next hour passed in a blur of domestic normalcy that Victoria hadn't experienced since childhood. Emma delegated tasks with military precision, folding napkins, arranging flowers from Sarah's garden, helping Jack carry steaming dishes from the kitchen. "Your mother taught her well," Victoria observed, watching Emma's careful attention to presentation. Jack's expression grew soft. "Sarah believed meals were about more than food. She said breaking bread together was how strangers became family." "Smart woman. The smartest. She would have liked you, I think." Victoria felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. "What makes you say that?" "You remind me of her, actually. Sarah grew up poor, clawed her way to better things through sheer determination. She never forgot where she came from, but she never let it define her limits." If only he knew how similar their stories truly were. Victoria's guilt about concealing Marcus's role grew heavier with each genuine smile Jack offered. Dinner proved to be a revelation. Emma's pot roast was restaurant quality. The conversation flowed naturally between farm life and business challenges, and Victoria found herself laughing more than she had in years. Jack told stories of Sarah's attempts to modernize farm equipment. Emma shared college plans with infectious enthusiasm, and Victoria contributed tales of boardroom battles that had the family hanging on every word. "You really told the banking commissioner to audit himself?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "He was being deliberately obstructive about agricultural lending regulations. Sometimes you have to escalate dramatically to get attention." Jack refilled her wine glass. "Sarah used to say the same thing. Go big or go home." "Was she from around here originally?" Jack's expression shifted slightly. "Iowa. Her family lost their farm when she was young, similar situation to what we're facing now, actually. She never talked about it, much too painful." Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. This was her opening to reveal Marcus's connection, but the warmth of the evening, the trust building between them, made the truth feel like a weapon she couldn't bring herself to wield. That must have been difficult for her. It's why she was so determined to make this place work. She used to say this farm was her second chance, her proof that families could build something lasting. Jack's voice grew quiet. "I can't let her down by losing it." Emma reached across to squeeze her father's hand. "Mom would understand, Dad. She'd want us to be practical." "Would she?" Jack looked at his daughter. "Or would she want us to fight with everything we had?" Victoria watched the interplay between father and daughter, seeing the love and worry they tried to hide from each other. Emma wanted her father to be practical because she was terrified of watching him break if they lost everything. Jack wanted to fight because giving up felt like betraying Sarah's memory and Emma's future. "What if there was a third option?" Victoria heard herself saying. Both Morrisons looked at her. "What do you mean?" Jack asked. Victoria took a deep breath, about to make a decision that would either save this family or destroy her own career. "What if we restructured the partnership terms? Sterling Financial becomes a silent partner. We provide the capital to pay off your debt and improve operations, but you retain full control. No strings attached." Jack set down his fork. That's incredibly generous. What's the catch?" "No catch, just call it an investment in good people." Emma Ma leaned forward. "What does your board think about investments in good people?" Victoria met the teenager's sharp gaze. "They don't know about this modification yet." "So you're risking your own position to help us?" Jack's voice carried a note of wonder. "Maybe." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Or maybe I just think this farm is worth more than its debt." The silence that followed felt charged with possibility and unspoken questions. Finally, Jack spoke. "Why, really why?" Victoria looked around the kitchen at Sarah's careful touches, at the photos spanning 3 decades of family life, at the man and daughter who'd somehow broken through her carefully constructed defenses in just 2 days. "Because this place, this family, it's what I walked away from when I was Emma's age. I thought sophistication and success meant leaving rural life behind. But sitting here tonight, I remember what I lost." Emma's suspicion finally cracked. "You really did grow up on a farm." "Until I was 16, parents lost everything, family scattered. I swore I'd never be vulnerable like that again, never let anyone have power over my security." Victoria's voice grew quiet. "I've spent 30 years building walls to protect myself. But walls that keep pain out also keep joy out." Jack reached across the table, covering her hand with his work-roughened fingers. The contact sent electricity shooting up Victoria's arm. "It's not too late to tear down walls," he said softly. Their eyes met across the table, and Victoria saw something that terrified and thrilled her, the possibility of connection deeper than business, stronger than the careful control that had governed her life for decades. Emma cleared her throat. "So, about this new partnership structure." Chapter 8, The Betrayal. The next morning, Victoria woke before dawn in her hotel room, her mind churning with plans to restructure the Morrison deal. She'd need to convince her board, probably invest some of her own money to make the numbers work, and find a way to sideline Marcus without revealing what she discovered about his past. Her phone rang at 6 a.m. "Marcus." "Victoria, we have a problem. The Morrison deal is off." Victoria sat up, instantly alert. "What do you mean off?" "I mean, First National Bank accelerated their foreclosure timeline. They're executing tomorrow instead of waiting 60 days. "That's impossible. Elena Vasquez specifically told me they'd honor the original timeline." Elena Vasquez is no longer making decisions about the Morrison account. I convinced the bank president that quick action was necessary to protect their interests. Victoria felt cold dread settling in her stomach. You went around me on my deal. Victoria, you've been in Montana too long. You're losing objectivity. This is just business. Don't. Victoria's voice carried 25 years of boardroom authority. Don't tell me what this is. You manipulated the bank to foreclose early. Why? Because I know you, Victoria. You're going soft on this acquisition, probably planning some ridiculous charity arrangement that'll cost us millions. He wasn't wrong about her plans, but his presumption infuriated her. Since when do you make unilateral decisions about my acquisitions? Since you started letting personal feelings interfere with business judgment. Victoria ended the call and immediately dialed Jack's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried the house phone, same result. Grabbing her keys, she raced toward Morrison Farm, but the sight that greeted her sent her world spinning out of control. Sheriff's vehicles, bank officials, a moving truck. Jack stood in his farmyard, Emma beside him, watching strangers load their possessions. His face was carved from stone, but Emma was crying openly. Victoria parked and ran toward them, but Elena Vasquez intercepted her. Miss Sterling, you can't be here. This is an active foreclosure. This is wrong. The bank agreed to honor the 60-day timeline. Elena's expression was tortured. Orders came down from corporate this morning. My hands are tied. Victoria pushed past her, reaching Jack just as bank officials emerged from the house with boxes of family photos. Jack, I can stop this. Give me 2 hours to call my lawyers. Jack turned to face her, and the betrayal in his eyes hit Victoria like a physical blow. Stop it. You orchestrated it. What? No, Jack, this wasn't me. Your partner called this morning to explain how the good cop, bad cop routine works. You soften us up with dinner and false friendship while he arranged to accelerate the foreclosure. Very professional. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus called you. Explained everything. How you've done this dozens of times, gain people's trust, make them believe you care, then destroy them when their guard is down. He said it was like watching a masterclass in manipulation. Jack, please, that's not what happened. Isn't it? Emma stepped forward, her face streaked with tears, but her voice steady with fury. You came here, wormed your way into our home, made my father care about you all, while planning to steal everything we have. I was trying to help the modified partnership terms. We're fake. Jack finished. Marcus explained that too. Standard practice to make victims feel like they have options right up until you take everything. Victoria reached toward him desperately. Jack, you have to believe me. Marcus is lying. Ma'am, I need you to step back. The sheriff moved between them. This is a lawful foreclosure proceeding. Victoria found herself being escorted away from the man she'd begun falling for, unable to explain, unable to prove her innocence. In her car, she called her lawyer, her assistant, anyone who might be able to halt the foreclosure proceedings. Nothing. Marcus had structured everything perfectly. The bank's corporate office had been convinced that immediate action was necessary. Legal delays would take days they didn't have. By sunset, the Morrison family was homeless, and Victoria Sterling was the owner of their farm. She'd gotten exactly what she'd originally come for and lost something she'd never expected to want. Chapter 9. Unraveling Truths. Victoria sat in the empty Morrison farmhouse as darkness fell, surrounded by the ghosts of family dinners and Sarah's loving touches. She dismissed the moving crew, the bank officials, everyone except her own conscience. Her phone buzzed constantly, Marcus calling to coordinate next steps, her assistant confirming acquisition paperwork, board members congratulating her on the successful deal. She ignored them all. Instead, she walked through rooms that still smelled like pot roast and wildflowers, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Sarah's garden was visible through the kitchen window, moonlight illuminating the careful rows of herbs and vegetables. Victoria stepped outside, drawn by an impulse she couldn't name. The garden was a masterpiece of sustainable agriculture, companion planting, natural pest control, heirloom varieties, preserved across generations. Sarah Morrison had been a farmer and scholar, someone who understood that working the land was both art and science. Beautiful, isn't it? Victoria spun around to find Elena Vasquez standing at the garden's edge, her face etched with sadness. Mr. Vasquez, I didn't expect... No one expects the bank manager to show up after a foreclosure, but I couldn't stay away. Elena stepped into the garden, her fingers trailing over Sarah's prized tomato plants. She spent 20 years perfecting this garden, taught half the county about organic methods. I didn't know. There's a lot you don't know about what you've destroyed today. Elena's voice carried quiet fury. Jack Morrison is the finest man I've ever known. When my husband walked out, left me with 2 kids and a mountain of debt, Jack and Sarah practically adopted us. Help with childcare, gave us fresh vegetables when money was tight, never asked for anything in return. Victoria felt shame burning in her chest. Elena, I need you to know this wasn't what I wanted. Marcus went behind my back. Did he? Elena turned to face her skepticism clear in her voice. Or are you feeling guilty now that you have to see the human cost of your business deals? You have to believe me, Bercy. I was trying to structure a partnership that would save the farm. Then why didn't you stop the foreclosure? You have that kind of power, don't you? Victoria's silence was answer enough. She did have that power theoretically, but using it would mean exposing Marcus's deception, destroying her business relationship, potentially ruining Sterling Financial. Everything she'd built for 25 years balanced against one family's happiness, and she'd chosen wrong. I thought so, Elena said softly. For what it's worth, I think your feelings for Jack were real. But real feelings without real action are just cruelty. After Elena left, Victoria remained in Sarah's garden, finally understanding the true scope of her failure. She'd convinced herself that business was business, that personal feelings couldn't influence professional decisions. But the truth was simpler and more damning. She'd been a coward. Fear of confronting Marcus, fear of risking her empire, fear of being vulnerable, all of it had made her complicit in destroying the first genuine happiness she'd felt in decades. Her phone rang, an unknown local number. Ms. Sterling, this is Tom Patterson, owner of Patterson's Hardware here in Willowbrook. Mr. Patterson, how can I help you? Actually, I'm calling to help you. Word's gotten around town about what happened to the Morrisons today. Most folks are pretty angry with your company. Victoria's heart sank further. I understand. I'm not sure you do. Jack Morrison is family to this entire community. When the tornado hit 5 years ago, Jack organized relief efforts that saved a dozen families. When old Pete Kowalski couldn't afford his medications, Jack quietly paid the pharmacy bill for 6 months. That man has given everything he had to help others. Mr. Patterson, I'm not finished. Emma Morrison tutors kids after school. Volunteers at the food bank organized the Christmas toy drive last year. That girl's been accepted to Stanford with full scholarship, but she's talking about staying local now because her family's got nothing left. Each word hit Victoria like a hammer blow. She'd destroyed good people, genuinely good people, because she'd been too afraid to risk her own comfort. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I want you to know that tomorrow morning, every business owner in Willowbrook is pulling their accounts from First National Bank. We're also canceling any contracts with companies that do business with Sterling Financial. Word's spreading to other communities too. Victoria closed her eyes. A coordinated boycott could cost Sterling Financial millions in regional contracts. Furthermore, Patterson continued, we've started a legal fund to challenge the foreclosure. Jack Morrison might be too proud to fight for himself, but this community will fight for him. After the call ended, Victoria sat in the darkness of the farmhouse kitchen, finally understanding the true cost of her cowardice. She hadn't just destroyed Jack and Emma Morrison, she'd made an enemy of an entire community that would rather suffer financial hardship than allow injustice to stand. But worse than the business implications was the knowledge that she'd looked into Jack Morrison's eyes and seen love beginning to grow there, then shattered it with her betrayal. Some mistakes couldn't be fixed with money or power. Some wounds cut too deep for healing. Victoria Sterling had gotten everything she'd thought she wanted and lost everything she'd never known she needed. Chapter 10, The Counterattack. Victoria spent the night in her hotel room, not sleeping but planning. By dawn, she'd made the most dangerous decision of her career. She was going to a war with Marcus Hayes. First, she called her private investigator. I need everything on Marcus Hayes, every deal, every connection, every skeleton in his closet. Money is no object, and I need it fast. Victoria, what's going on? Marcus just destroyed something important to me. Now I'm going to return the favor. Next, she called her lawyer, not the corporate law firm Sterling Financial usually employed, but a cutthroat litigation specialist she'd used for hostile takeovers. Jennifer, it's Victoria Sterling. I need you to find every legal avenue to reverse a foreclosure executed yesterday in Montana. Also, I'm going to need advice on removing a business partner. Victoria, slow down. What's happening? What's happening is that I'm about to risk everything I've built to fix the biggest mistake of my life. The third call was the hardest. She dialed Jack's cell phone expecting voicemail, but he answered on the second ring. What do you want? His voice was flat, empty of the warmth she'd grown to treasure. 5 minutes, face to face. I know you hate me and you have every right to, but I need 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain. Jack Marcus Hayes foreclosed on your wife's family farm 40 years ago. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. This isn't just business, it's personal revenge for something Sarah's family did to him decades ago. The silence stretched so long Victoria thought he'd hung up. Finally, that's impossible. I have documentation. Bank records, financial transfers, everything. Marcus has been manipulating both of us from the beginning. Another pause. Even if that's true, you still went along with it. Victoria closed her eyes. You're right, I was a coward when you needed me to be brave. But I'm done being a coward. What does that mean? It means I'm going to fix this Jack. All of it, even if it destroys me in the process. Victoria, just don't give up on your farm yet. Give me 48 hours. She hung up before he could refuse, then made the call that would either save everything or cost her everything. Marcus, it's Victoria. We need to meet. Chapter 11, Revelations and Revenge. Victoria arrived at Sterling Financial's regional office 3 hours later to find Marcus waiting in the conference room looking supremely satisfied with himself. Victoria, congratulations on the successful acquisition. The Morrison property should integrate beautifully with our expansion plans. Victoria closed the conference room door and activated the white noise generator she'd had installed for sensitive meetings. Cut the act, Marcus. I know what you did. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Victoria saw the slight tightening around his eyes. I executed a foreclosure. Standard business practice. You manipulated the timeline to prevent me from restructuring the deal. I protected Sterling Financial from a bad business decision driven by personal feelings. Victoria opened her briefcase and placed a thick folder on the table. Sarah Morrison was Sarah Caldwell before she married. Her family's farm was foreclosed by Sterling Holdings in 1983. Care to guess who executed that foreclosure? Now Marcus's composure cracked slightly. Ancient history. Is it because I have bank records showing you immediately sold the Caldwell property to a shell company, you own it for 300% profit? That's fraud, Marcus. Marcus stood abruptly, moving toward the window. You can't prove anything. Can I? Victoria pulled out another document. I also have records showing you specifically targeted the Morrison property for acquisition, despite minimal profit potential. You manipulated me into pursuing a deal that was always about personal revenge, not business logic. Even if that were true, which I'm not admitting the statute of limitations, has run out on the original fraud. Yes, but conspiracy to defraud Sterling Financial's current investors. That's a fresh crime, Marcus, and I have documented evidence of your manipulation. Marcus turned from the window, his mask finally falling away, to reveal cold calculation. You're bluffing. You can't move against me without destroying Sterling Financial. I know where all the bodies are buried, Victoria. Try me. Fine. Marcus's voice turned vicious. You want to destroy your own company for some farmer you've known 3 days? Go ahead. But when the board learns about your unauthorized modifications to the Morrison deal, when they discover you've compromised Sterling Financial's interests for personal reasons, who do you think they'll blame? Victoria felt a chill of fear, not for herself, but for the realization of how calculating Marcus had been. You planned this from the beginning. The Morrison acquisition was never about profit. Of course it wasn't. Sarah Caldwell cost me everything 40 years ago. Her family's legal challenge to that foreclosure triggered an investigation that nearly ended my career. I've been waiting decades for the right moment to finish what I started. What did Sarah's family do to you? Marcus's laugh was bitter. They fought back. Most farmers accepted foreclosure quietly, but the Caldwells hired lawyers demanded audits made noise. The investigation exposed my side business in foreclosure properties. I lost everything I'd built. Victoria stared at him with growing horror. So you destroyed an innocent family out of spite? I destroyed enemies who tried to destroy me first. And when I learned Sarah Caldwell had married a Montana farmer, started a new family, it was too perfect an opportunity to waste. You're sick. I'm practical. Sentiment is weakness, Victoria. You taught me that. I never taught you to destroy innocent people. Didn't you? Marcus leaned across the table. How many families have we foreclosed on over the years? How many businesses have we acquired and stripped for parts? You built this empire on other people's broken dreams. Victoria felt the truth of his words like physical blows. He was right. She had built her success on others' failures, had convinced herself it was just business, while people lost everything. But not anymore. You're right, she said quietly. I have been responsible for destroying innocent people, but that ends now. What are you talking about? Victoria stood gathering her documents. I'm talking about making this right, all of it. Marcus laughed. You can't save everyone, Victoria, and you certainly can't save Jack Morrison. The foreclosure is complete. The property is legally ours, and the property is legally mine, Victoria corrected. I structured the acquisition through my personal holdings. Remember Sterling? Financial was the financing partner, but I own the Morrison farm. Marcus's face went white. That's not possible. Check the paperwork. I always read the fine print, Marcus. Something you taught me. Victoria headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Marcus, you're fired. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. You can't do this? I'll destroy you. I'll tell the board. Tell them what? That you manipulated company resources for personal revenge, that you committed fraud 40 years ago, that you've been using Sterling Financial to settle old scores. Victoria smiled coldly. Go ahead. I have documentation for everything. As she left Marcus sputtering in the conference room, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, the satisfaction of doing the right thing regardless of the cost. Now came the hard part, convincing Jack Morrison to give her a chance to make amends. Chapter 12, The Gesture. Victoria drove straight to Willowbrook's main street, where she knew she'd find the Morrison family. They'd be staying at Elena Vasquez's house, probably planning their next move with the kind of quiet dignity that had impressed her from the beginning. But first, she had a stop to make. Patterson's Hardware was busy despite the early-hour locals gathering to discuss the previous day's events. Conversation stopped when Victoria entered, hostility radiating from every corner of the store. Tom Patterson emerged from behind the counter, his face carefully neutral. Miss Sterling, didn't expect to see you here. Mr. Patterson, I need to speak with you about Jack Morrison. I said what needed saying last night. Victoria took a deep breath. What if I told you the foreclosure was based on fraud, that my business partner manipulated the timeline to prevent me from saving the farm? Patterson's eyebrows rose. I'd say that's a convenient story now that you're facing community backlash. It's the truth, and I can prove it. Victoria pulled out copies of Marcus's communications with the bank. I'm also prepared to make this right. Patterson studied the documents, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. This shows your partner went around you. Marcus Hayes has been planning to destroy the Morrison family for 40 years. It started with Sarah's parents, and he used me to finish what he started. Word spread quickly through the store. Within minutes, Victoria found herself surrounded by concerned neighbors, all wanting to know if there was hope for the Morrisons. What are you planning to do about it? Asked a woman Victoria recognized as the school teacher. I'm going to give them back their farm. Free and clear. Stunned silence greeted this announcement. Finally, Patterson spoke. You're going to give it back, no strings attached. No strings attached. The Morrison family has lost enough because of Sterling Financial's actions. They shouldn't lose anything more because of my failures. What about your company? Your investment? Victoria had been asking herself the same question. The Morrison farm represented a significant financial loss, and transferring property for no compensation would raise questions with her board, her investors, possibly regulatory authorities. Some things matter more than money, she said simply. An hour later, Victoria knocked on Elena Vasquez's front door, legal documents tucked under her arm and her heart hammering against her ribs. Elena answered, wariness clear in her expression. It's Sterling. Is Jack here? I need to speak with him. He doesn't want to see you. Elena, please. I have something that belongs to him. Elena studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. He's in the backyard with Emma. But Victoria, if you hurt him again, this entire town will make your life hell. Victoria found Jack sitting on Elena's back porch, staring at the garden that reminded him painfully of Sarah's carefully tended plants. Emma sat beside him, both of them looking lost in a way that broke Victoria's heart. Jack. Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. He looked up, and she saw that the betrayal had been replaced by something worse: resignation. Come to gloat. I came to give you something. Victoria held out the legal documents. The deed to your farm. Emma stood abruptly. What kind of trick is this? No trick. The property is being transferred back to you free and clear. No debt, no strings attached. Jack studied the papers without taking them. Why, Barty? Because Marcus Hayes used me to destroy your family, and I was too much of a coward to stop him when I could have. Because you and Emma deserve better than losing everything due to one man's 40-year-old grudge. What grudge? Emma asked. Victoria explained everything: Sarah's family history, Marcus's fraud, the decades-long plan for revenge. With each revelation, she watched Jack's expression shift from suspicion to surprise to anger that burned cold and deep. He destroyed Sarah's family once and then used my company to destroy the families she built afterward. Victoria finished. I can't undo the past, but I can make sure he doesn't win. Jack finally took the deed, studying it carefully. This transfers full-on ownership to us. No mortgage, no debt. Clean title? What about your investment? Your company. Victoria sat down on the porch steps, suddenly feeling every one of her 48 years. I'll absorb the loss personally. As for Sterling Financial, I'm not sure there will be a Sterling Financial after the board learns what I've done. You're risking everything, Emma said quietly. I already lost everything that mattered when I betrayed your trust, Victoria replied. At least this way, you get your home back. Jack was quiet for a long moment, reading through the legal documents. Finally, he looked up. Victoria, this is incredibly generous, but it doesn't change what happened. Victoria nodded, trying to keep the pain from her voice. I know. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. I'm trying to do what I should have done from the beginning, the right thing. She stood to leave, but Emma's voice stopped her. Wait, what happens to you now? After you give us the farm back? Victoria managed a smile. I figure out what comes next. Maybe I'll remember how to be the farm girl I used to be before I became so afraid of being vulnerable. As she walked away, Victoria heard Jack call her name. She turned back, the hope fluttering in her chest. Thank you, he said simply, for doing the right thing even when it cost you everything. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't goodbye either. For now, that was enough. Chapter 13. Consequences. 3 weeks later, Victoria sat in Sterling Financial's boardroom, facing the consequences of her decisions. 12 stern faces stared back at her, representing billions in investment capital in decades of business relationships. Board Chairman William Thorne led the inquisition. Victoria, help us understand how you transferred a $2 million property to private individuals for zero compensation without board approval. The Morrison farm was acquired through my personal holdings, not company funds. I had the legal right to dispose of the property as I saw fit. Using company resources for personal acquisitions creates liability issues. All company resources were properly compensated, Victoria's lawyer interjected. Mrs. Sterling followed proper protocols. Board member Margaret Foster leaned forward. Victoria, setting aside the legal technicalities, your actions have created significant problems. Marcus Hayes is claiming you conspired with the Morrison family to defraud Sterling Financial. He's threatening litigation. Victoria had expected this. Marcus Hayes has no standing for litigation. I've provided documentation of his fraudulent activities spanning 40 years. If he wants to file suit, I welcome the discovery process. Nevertheless, your behavior has been erratic. Emotional decision-making has no place in corporate governance. Victoria studied the faces around the table, people she'd worked with for years, whose respect she'd earned through careful calculation and ruthless efficiency. They saw her recent actions as betrayal of everything she'd built. Maybe they were right. You want my resignation? she said simply. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, Thorne spoke. Victoria, you've built something remarkable here. Sterling Financial is one of the most successful investment firms in the country, and that's due to your leadership. But recent events suggest you may have lost perspective. What are you proposing? Take a sabbatical, 6 months to get your head straight. Margaret can serve as interim CEO while you sort through whatever personal issues are affecting your judgment. Victoria looked around the table one more time, seeing the carefully neutral expressions that masked their real feelings. She'd become a liability they needed to manage. I don't need 6 months, she said quietly. I know exactly what I need to do. She stood pulling a letter from her briefcase. My resignation effective immediately. Margaret, the company is yours. Stunned silence followed her announcement. Thorne recovered first. Victoria, let's not be hasty. I'm not being hasty. I'm being honest for the first time in years. Victoria gathered her belongings. Sterling Financial will be fine without me. Better, probably. You won't have to worry about me making emotional decisions. As she reached the door, Foster called after her. Victoria, what will you do? Victoria paused, thinking of Sarah's garden of Jack's, weathered hands of Emma's fierce loyalty to family. I'm going to remember who I was before I became afraid of being human. Chapter 40 starting over 2 days later, Victoria's phone rang as she packed her Manhattan penthouse. Jack Morrison. Victoria, I heard about your resignation. News traveled fast in small communities, even when the community was New York's financial district. Word gets around. Are you okay? The genuine concern in his voice nearly broke her composure. I'm fine, better than fine actually. Turns out stepping away from something you've built can be liberating. What will you do now? Victoria looked around her sterile apartment at the expensive furniture and meaningless trophies of corporate success. I'm not sure, maybe remember what it's like to grow things instead of acquiring them. Victoria, Jack's voice was careful and certain. Emma and I have been talking about what you did, what it cost you. Jack, you don't need to, we'd like you to visit when you're ready, if you're willing. Victoria closed her eyes, hardly daring to hope. Are you sure after everything I put you through? You made mistakes, but you also sacrificed everything to make them right. That means something, and I don't know if I deserve. None of us deserve anything, Jack interrupted gently, but sometimes we get second chances anyway. The question is what we do with them. 3 days later, Victoria drove into Willowbrook in a rented pickup truck, her Manhattan wardrobe replaced by practical clothes suitable for farm work. She'd sold her penthouse, liquidated most of her investment portfolio, and donated the proceeds to agricultural preservation charities. For the first time in decades, she owned almost nothing and felt utterly free. The Morrison farm looked different in late summer light. The foreclosure crisis was over, the property legally theirs again, but the stress of nearly losing everything had taken its toll. Equipment that needed repair sat idle in the yard. Fences sagged where maintenance had been deferred. The garden showed signs of neglect. Emma met her at the front gate, no longer the suspicious teenager who challenged every word Victoria spoke. Loss and near disaster had matured her, but also revealed strength Victoria hadn't expected. Dad's in the north field checking the wheat, Emma said. He's been nervous about seeing you again. And you, Emma studied her for a moment. I'm glad you came back. Dad's been different since you left, not sad exactly, but like he was waiting for something. Victoria found Jack exactly where Emma had said, standing among golden wheat stalks ready for harvest. He looked up as she approached, and the smile that spread across his face made Victoria's heart skip. You came. You invited me. They stood awkwardly for a moment, both unsure how to navigate the changed dynamic between them. Finally, Jack spoke. I owe you an apology. Jack, no. Yes, I do. I should have trusted you. Should have known you wouldn't manipulate us like that. Victoria shook her head. You had every right to doubt me. I gave you plenty of reasons. Maybe, but I also saw who you really were in those moments when you let your guard down. I should have remembered that person instead of believing Marcus's lies. Who I really am got us into this mess in the first place. Jack stepped closer, his hand reaching toward her face, then dropping to his side. Who you really are saved us. The Victoria Sterling who built that financial empire might have been successful, but she wasn't happy. The woman who gave up everything to do the right thing, that's who I fell for. Victoria felt tears threatening. I destroyed your trust. Trust can be rebuilt. The question is whether you want to try on. Before Victoria could answer, Emma appeared at the edge of the field. Dad, Victoria, you need to come see this. They hurried toward the house where Emma stood beside a black sedan with government plates. A woman in a business suit waited on the front porch. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Morrison, I'm Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. I need to speak with you about Marcus Hayes and Sterling Financial. Chapter 15, Justice Served. Agent Chen's investigation had been thorough and devastating. Armed with Victoria's documentation and her own team's research, the FBI had uncovered a 40-year pattern of fraudulent foreclosures, shell company manipulations, and investor fraud. Mr. Hayes has been arrested on multiple federal charges, Chen explained as they sat around the Morrison kitchen table. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud and racketeering under the RICO statute. Victoria felt a grim satisfaction. What about the families he destroyed over the years? That's more complicated. Statute of limitations has run out on most of the older cases, but we're working with state authorities to provide restitution where possible. Jack leaned forward. What does this mean for other families currently facing foreclosure through Hayes's methods? We've identified 17 active cases that show signs of manipulation similar to yours. Those foreclosures will be reviewed and likely reversed. Emma poured coffee for everyone, her movements automatic while she absorbed the implications. So Victoria's evidence helped save other families too. Your evidence and testimony were crucial to building this case, Chen told Victoria. Hayes might have continued his schemes for years without your cooperation. After Agent Chen left, the three of them sat in contemplative silence. Finally, Jack spoke. It's over. Really over. Are you okay with that? Victoria asked. Having this all dragged up again, Jack considered the question carefully. I'm glad justice is being served. Sarah's family, all those other families Marcus destroyed, they deserve vindication, even if it comes 40 years late. Emma stood abruptly. I need to call Stanford. Tell them I'll be deferring enrollment for a year. Emma, no, Jack said immediately. We talked about this. We talked about it when we thought we'd lost everything. Now we have the farm back, but it needs work. You can't manage the harvest and repairs alone. Victoria watched the familiar argument unfold, Jack wanting his daughter to pursue her dreams, Emma feeling obligated to sacrifice for family. Both of them were right and both were wrong. What if there was another option? Victoria said quietly. Both Morrisons looked at her. What do you mean? Jack asked. Victoria took a deep breath, about to make another decision that would change everything. What if I stayed help with the farm work while Emma goes to school? Victoria, you don't know anything about farming, Emma said gently. I grew up on a farm. I've just spent 30 years forgetting what I learned as a child, but muscle memory is still there. Jack studied her face carefully. You're serious, dead serious. I don't have anywhere else to be, nothing else to do. And maybe it's time I remembered what it's like to grow things instead of acquiring them. What about your life in New York? What life, an empty apartment and a career built on other people's misfortune? Victoria shook her head. That wasn't living, Jack. That was just existing. Emma looked between her father and Victoria, seeing possibilities that made her heart race with hope. You'd really stay help Dad with the harvest. If you'll have me, if Jack trusts me enough to trust. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Jack finally spoke. Victoria, are you sure farm work is hard, especially this time of year? 16-hour days, physical labor, constant worry about weather and markets. Victoria smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Sounds perfect. Chapter 16, Harvest Time. September in Montana proved everything Jack had warned about and more. Victoria woke before dawn, each day muscles aching from work. Her body hadn't done in decades, hands blistered despite work gloves, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with corporate stress. And she'd never been happier. Working alongside Jack in the fields, she rediscovered rhythms she'd forgotten, the way morning light changed the color of wheat, the satisfaction of machinery running smoothly, the deep tiredness that came from honest physical labor. You're getting the hang of it, Jack said, as they repaired fence posts one afternoon. Victoria's technique was improving, her movements becoming more confident. Muscle memory, Victoria replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. Amazing what comes back when you need it. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the easy companionship that had developed over weeks of shared labor. Gradually, Victoria had become part of the farm's daily rhythm in helping with equipment, maintenance, managing paperwork, her financial expertise proving valuable for crop sales, even learning to drive the combine harvester. Victoria, Jack's voice was casual, but she heard the underlying tension. Yeah, what happens after harvest? Victoria paused in her hammering understanding the real question. They'd been dancing around it for weeks, the growing closeness between them, the moments when professional partnership felt like something deeper. I don't know, she said honestly. What do you want to happen? Jack set down his post-hole digger, his weathered hands finding hers. I want you to stay, not just for the farm work, but for us. Victoria felt her heart race. Jack, I know it's complicated. I know you've given up everything to be here, and I don't want you to feel pressured. Victoria silenced him by stepping closer, her hands reaching up to frame his face. Jack Morrison, for a smart man, you can be incredibly dense. What do you mean? I mean, I didn't give up everything to come here. I left nothing to find everything. When Jack kissed her, it was with 30 years of loneliness and the promise of whatever came next. Victoria tasted hope and possibility, the sweetness of second chances neither of them had expected. They broke apart as Emma's voice carried across the field. Dad, Victoria, come quick. They hurried toward the house where Emma stood beside the mailbox with an envelope in her hands and tears streaming down her face. Emma, what's wrong? Jack immediately shifted into protective father mode. Nothing's wrong, Emma said, laughing through her tears. Everything's right. It's from Stanford. They're offering me a full scholarship in work-study program. I can afford to go without any family money. Jack swept his daughter into a fierce hug, spinning her around in the farmyard. Em, that's incredible. There's more, Emma said as he set her down. They're also offering internship programs with sustainable agriculture companies. I could study environmental science and still come back to help with the farm during breaks. Victoria watched father and daughter celebrate, feeling a completeness she'd never experienced. This was what family looked like: shared joy, mutual support, love that didn't diminish when divided among more people. What about you? Emma asked Victoria. Will you stay? Really stay, not just until I get settled at school. Victoria looked at Jack, saw the hope and uncertainty in his eyes, then back at Emma's expectant face. If your father wants me to stay, I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be. Chapter 17. Building Something New. Winter in Montana taught Victoria new lessons about patience planning and the deep satisfaction of surviving harsh conditions through preparation and teamwork. With Emma away at Stanford, she and Jack settled into the rhythm of a couple building something together. Evenings were spent planning next year's crops, researching new sustainable farming techniques, and slowly renovating the farmhouse. Victoria had insisted on updating the kitchen not to erase Sarah's memory, but to create space for new traditions while honoring old ones. Sarah would have loved this, Jack said one evening as they installed new countertops. She always said this kitchen needed more workspace. Victoria had worried about Sarah's presence in their relationship, but Jack spoke of his first wife with love, untainted by guilt, sharing memories that helped Victoria understand the remarkable woman whose loss had shaped this family. She was extraordinary, Victoria said, running her hand along the smooth granite surface. I wish I could have known her. You would have liked each other. Sarah had your strength, your determination to fight for what's right. And your heart, Victoria added softly. In January, unexpected news arrived that would test their growing partnership. Victoria received a call from Margaret Foster, her successor at Sterling Financial. Victoria, we have a problem. Marcus Hayes is claiming wrongful termination and demanding reinstatement. His lawyers are arguing that your accusations were fabricated to cover your own misconduct. Victoria felt cold dread settling in her stomach. What does that mean? It means you may need to testify in federal court. The defense is trying to paint you as an unreliable witness motivated by personal vendettas. That evening, Victoria shared the news with Jack as they worked side by side in the barn, maintaining equipment for spring planting. How long would you need to be in New York? Jack asked, his voice carefully neutral. Could be weeks, maybe months if it goes to trial. Jack nodded, focusing intently on the wrench in his hands. We'll manage. Victoria studied his profile, recognizing the signs of withdrawal she'd seen before when he felt someone was leaving. Jack, I'm coming back. Are you? Because successful people don't usually stay in places like Willowbrook. They come here for adventure, for healing, then they go back to their real lives. Victoria set down her tools and turned to face him fully. Is that what you think this is adventure tourism while I figure out my next career move? I don't know what to think. 6 months ago, you were running a $1 billion company. Now you're repairing farm equipment and planning crop rotations. People don't make changes like that permanently. Victoria saw the fear beneath his words, the terror of loving someone who might leave the way his first wife had been taken from him without warning. Jack Morrison, look at me. When he finally met her eyes, she continued, I sold my penthouse. I liquidated my investment portfolio. I resigned from the company I spent 25 years building. Those aren't the actions of someone planning to go back to their real life. But the trial will end eventually, and when it does, I'll come home. Here. To you, to this farm, to the life we're building together. Jack's resistance crumbled. I'm scared, Victoria. Sarah's death taught me how quickly everything can change. Everything can change quickly, Victoria agreed, but love, real love, that's what sees us through the changes. She kissed him, then pouring all her certainty and commitment into the contact. When they broke apart, Jack's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, which is why I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Marcus Hayes faces justice for what he did to your family. Chapter 18, The Trial. The federal courthouse in Manhattan felt like another planet compared to the wide-open spaces of Montana. Victoria arrived in early March trading work boots for business suits, preparing to face the man who'd manipulated them all. Marcus Hayes had aged poorly in federal custody. The polished businessman who'd once commanded board meetings looked haggard, desperate, diminished. But his lawyer was sharp, a high-priced defense attorney who specialized in making white-collar criminals look sympathetic. Ms. Sterling, the defense attorney, began during cross-examination. Isn't it true that you've suffered significant financial losses due to your romantic entanglement with Mr. Morrison? I made financial sacrifices to correct injustices, yes. Injustices that cost you your career, your company, your fortune. Quite convenient to blame those losses on my client's supposed manipulation. Victoria met the lawyer's gaze steadily. Mr. Hayes documented his own manipulation in written communications and recorded phone calls. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence you had access to modify given your position at Sterling Financial. The FBI's forensic analysis confirmed the authenticity of all documents. The lawyer changed tactics. Miss Sterling, prior to meeting the Morrison family, had you ever reversed a profitable business acquisition for purely emotional reasons? Victoria paused, understanding the trap. No. Had you ever given away millions of dollars in assets to people you'd known less than a week? No. Had you ever resigned from a successful company to pursue manual labor on a farm? No. So your behavior regarding the Morrison family represented a complete departure from your normal business practices, correct? Yes. Behavior that began immediately after you met Mr. Jack Morrison, a man you're now romantically involved with. Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. My personal relationship with Mr. Morrison developed after I made the decision to return his property. But your emotional investment in the family preceded your business decisions, didn't it? The prosecutor objected before Victoria could answer, but the damage was done. The defense was painting her as an unreliable witness whose testimony was motivated by romantic delusion rather than genuine evidence of fraud. That evening, Victoria called Jack from her hotel room, feeling defeated. How did it go? Terrible. They're making me look like a lovesick fool who destroyed her own company out of infatuation. Jack's voice was gentle. Is that what you think happened? Victoria considered the question seriously. I think I made business decisions based on human decency instead of pure profit. And yes, my feelings for you influenced those decisions. But that doesn't make Marcus's fraud any less real. Victoria, listen to me. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you did the right thing. You saved our farm, our future, possibly other families too. That matters more than what some lawyer tries to make it sound like. What if the jury doesn't believe me? What if Marcus goes free because I can't separate personal feelings from professional testimony? Then we'll deal with it together. But Victoria, don't you dare start doubting yourself. You're the strongest, most principled person I know. The next day brought the prosecution's star witness, Agent Chen, whose FBI investigation had uncovered decades of fraudulent activity. Her testimony was methodical, devastating, and completely independent of Victoria's evidence. Agent Chen, the prosecutor asked, did your investigation uncover evidence of fraud by Mr. Hayes prior to Ms. Sterling's accusations? Yes, we'd been building a case against Mr. Hayes for 18 months before Ms. Sterling came forward. So her testimony wasn't the foundation of your investigation. Ms. Sterling's cooperation provided crucial documentation, but our case was already substantially developed through other sources. Victoria watched the defense lawyer's confidence evaporate as Agent Chen methodically dismantled their primary argument. Marcus Hayes wasn't being prosecuted because of her romantic feelings. He was facing justice for crimes that had been discovered independently. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Marcus Hayes would spend the next 15 years in federal prison, his victims finally vindicated. As Victoria walked out of the courthouse, she felt the weight of the past years settling on her shoulders. She'd lost a career, gained a love, faced her fears, and helped bring a criminal to justice. The woman who'd entered that building was different from the one leaving it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jack. However it went, come home. We're waiting for you. Chapter 19, Full Circle. Victoria returned to Montana just as spring planning began, trading her courthouse attire for work clothes with relief that felt like coming up for air after nearly drowning. Jack met her at the small regional airport, and the moment she saw his face, all the stress of the trial melted away. This was home, not a place, but a person who'd become essential to her happiness. How do you feel? He asked as they drove through the familiar landscape of rolling hills and wide skies. Free. For the first time in my adult life, completely free. What does that mean? Victoria considered the question as they passed other farm signs of spring renewal everywhere. It means I don't have to carry anyone else's agenda anymore. Not Marcus's manipulation, not my board's expectations, not even my own fear of being vulnerable. The farm looked different in early spring fields, prepared for planting equipment, ready for another season. The sense of potential that came with new beginnings. Emma was home for spring break, taller somehow, more confident after her first year at Stanford. She hugged Victoria fiercely at the front door. How did it go? Dad said Marcus was convicted. 15 years in federal prison, plus restitution to his victims. Good. Emma's voice carried satisfaction beyond her years. Some people deserve consequences. That evening, the three of them sat on the front porch watching the sun set over fields that would soon be green with new crops. Victoria felt peace settling over her like a familiar blanket. I have something to tell you both, Emma said, her voice carrying a note of nervous excitement. Jack looked up from his coffee. What is it? I've been thinking about my major. Environmental science is great, but I want to add agricultural business as a second major. Victoria raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of work. I know, but I've been thinking, this farm has been in our family for 3 generations. Maybe it's time to make sure it stays for 3 more. Jack set down his mug carefully. You don't have to. I want to. Not because I have to, but because I love this place. I love what we're building here. Emma looked at Victoria. What we're all building together. Victoria felt tears threatening. Emma, are you sure you have so many options? I'm sure. I want to modernize our operations, maybe expand into agritourism, sustainable agriculture, education. There are ways to make family farms profitable and sustainable. Jack studied his daughter's face, seeing determination rather than obligation. You've really thought this through. I've had all year to think about it. Stanford is amazing, but it's not home. This is home. Victoria reached across to squeeze Emma's hand. Your mother would be so proud. I think she'd be proud of all of us, Emma replied. Dad finding love again, Victoria choosing family over fortune, me choosing to carry on what she started. As darkness settled over the farm, Victoria reflected on the year that had changed everything. She'd lost a fortune but gained a family. She'd faced her fears and found courage she didn't know she possessed. She'd learned the difference between success and fulfillment. Jack, Victoria's voice was quiet in the gathering dusk. Yeah, I have something to ask you. Jack turned toward her, sensing the importance of whatever was coming. Victoria pulled a small velvet box from her pocket, her heart hammering against her ribs. I know this is unconventional. I know women don't usually propose, but I've spent my whole life waiting for other people to make the first move, and I'm done waiting. Jack's eyes widened as Victoria dropped to one knee beside his porch chair. Jack Morrison, you showed me what real strength looks like, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that protects and nurtures. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. You gave me a home when I didn't even know I was lost. Emma gasped, her hands flying to cover her mouth. Victoria opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the porch light. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life growing old with you on this farm we both love? Jack stared at her for a moment, then began laughing. Not mockery, but pure joy. Victoria Sterling, you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes. As Jack slipped the ring onto his finger and pulled Victoria into his arms for a kiss that tasted like promises, and forever Emma cheered from her chair. Wait until I tell Stanford my stepmother proposed to my father, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. They're never going to believe this family. We are pretty unbelievable, Victoria agreed, looking around at the farm that had become her sanctuary, the man who'd become her heart, the daughter who'd become her legacy. She'd come to Montana to acquire a property. Instead, she'd found herself. Chapter 20. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Morrison family farm had become something none of them had envisioned that first autumn, when Victoria arrived in her expensive suit and predatory intentions. What started as 300 acres of struggling organic crops had evolved into a thriving, sustainable agriculture education center. Emma had graduated from Stanford with degrees in environmental science and agricultural business, then spent 2 years developing the farm's educational programs. Now 24, she ran workshops on sustainable farming, hosted school groups, and managed the farm's growing agritourism business. The Peterson Tour Group is here, Emma called across the farmyard, her voice carrying the confidence that had replaced teenage uncertainty. Victoria looked up from the heirloom tomato plants she'd been tending. Sarah's original varieties preserved and expanded into a small specialty market business. At 53, she'd grown strong and healthy from years of physical work, her expensive manicures replaced by soil-stained hands that told stories of honest labor. Jack emerged from the barn, now 57, but moving with the easy grace of a man who'd found his perfect life partner. The grief lines that had marked his face for so many years had been replaced by smile lines, evidence of happiness that had returned to stay. Ready for the tour? He asked Victoria, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Always ready to show off our operation, Victoria replied, leaning back against his chest. The Peterson family, parents and 3 children from Minneapolis, represented the typical visitors who came to Morrison Farm for weekend education retreats. City families wanting to understand where their food came from, couples seeking a romantic getaway in working farm accommodations, students studying sustainable agriculture. Welcome to Morrison Farm. Emma began her well-practiced introduction. This operation has been in our family for 3 generations, and we're proud to demonstrate how traditional farming methods can integrate with modern sustainability practices. Victoria watched Emma lead the tour, pointing out heritage breed chickens, explaining crop rotation principles, demonstrating solar-powered irrigation systems. The confident young woman bore little resemblance to the frightened teenager who'd faced foreclosure 5 years earlier. She's incredible, Jack murmured in Victoria's ear. She gets it from both her parents, Victoria replied. Sarah's intelligence and your strength. And your business sense, don't forget that. The morning tour concluded with Emma's signature presentation on making family farms profitable in the 21st century, a blend of traditional agriculture wisdom and innovative marketing that had attracted attention from agricultural universities across the region. Questions? Emma asked as the Peterson family gathered around the demonstration garden. 10-year-old Maya Peterson raised her hand. Do you ever miss living in the city? Emma smiled, her gaze moving across fields where her mother had played as a child, where her father had taught her to drive a tractor, where her stepmother had learned to find peace after years of corporate warfare. This is home, Emma said simply. When you're home, there's nowhere else you need to be. That afternoon, while their guests explored the surrounding countryside, Victoria and Jack sat on the porch swing. He'd installed the previous spring, Sarah's favorite spot, updated for new memories. The Montana State University Extension office called, Victoria said, scrolling through messages on her phone. They want Emma to speak at their Sustainable Agriculture Conference next month. She'll say yes, she loves that stuff. She's thinking about starting a master's program, agricultural extension and education. Jack nodded approvingly, following her own path, not just continuing ours. Victoria set aside her phone, focusing on the peaceful scene before them. The farm showed signs of prosperity that had nothing to do with financial statements. Well-maintained buildings, healthy crops, the contentment of people doing work they loved. Any regrets? Jack asked a question that had become ritual between them. About leaving New York, about giving up Sterling Financial, about any of it. Victoria considered the question as seriously as she always did. Do you know what I read in Forbes last month? Sterling Financial has been investigated twice for questionable agricultural acquisitions since I left. Margaret Foster is fighting off hostile takeover attempts. 3 board members have resigned over ethics violations, and their stock price has dropped 30%. So you're glad you got out when you did? I'm glad I learned the difference between building something that lasts and building something that just looks impressive. Victoria gestured toward the fields where Emma was demonstrating heritage seed preservation to the Peterson children. This will be here for Emma's grandchildren. Sterling Financial might not survive another 5 years. As evening approached, the Peterson family gathered for their final farm dinner. Emma's presentation of heritage vegetables prepared using Sarah's recipes served family style in the updated farmhouse kitchen. This has been amazing, Mrs. Peterson said as they finished dessert. Maya hasn't stopped talking about heritage chickens since this morning. Dad, can we get chickens? Maya asked for the 3rd time that day. We'll see, Mr. Peterson replied with the diplomatic non-answer of experienced parents. Emma smiled. If you decide to try backyard chickens, we can connect you with suppliers for heritage breeds, and you're always welcome to visit again. After their guests departed for their hotel in town, the family settled into evening routines that had evolved over 5 years of shared life. Emma updated social media for the farm's educational programs. Jack reviewed weather forecasts and equipment schedules. Victoria planned the following week's specialty crop harvests. The Hendersons want to book 3 weekend workshops this fall, Victoria reported. That's 15 families total for September and October. Sustainable agriculture is becoming mainstream, Emma observed. 5 years ago, people thought we were hippies. Now everyone wants to learn about organic methods. Timing is everything, Jack said. Sometimes the world catches up to what you're already doing. As they prepared for bed, Victoria and Jack walked through the house that had become truly theirs, renovated and updated, but still fundamentally the home Sarah had created for her family. In their bedroom, Victoria paused at the window overlooking Sarah's expanded garden. Moonlight illuminated rows of vegetables, herb spirals, and the greenhouse Emma had built for year-round growing. She would have loved seeing it all come together, Victoria said softly. Jack joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. She would have loved you. The way you've honored what she built while making it your own. Do you think we've done right by her memory? I think we've done exactly what she would have wanted, protected the family, preserved the farm, and built something beautiful together. The next morning brought news that would test their peaceful stability. Victoria's phone rang during breakfast, Margaret Foster calling from Sterling Financial. Victoria, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need advice. The board wants to sell off our agricultural investment portfolio, and I think it's a mistake. Victoria stepped outside to take the call, not wanting to bring corporate drama into the farm kitchen. Margaret, I haven't been involved with agricultural investments for 5 years. My perspective might not be current. Your perspective might be exactly what I need. The board sees agricultural investment as too volatile, too dependent on weather and market fluctuations. But you always said agricultural land was the most stable long-term investment available. I still believe that, but Margaret, I can't advise you on Sterling Financial business decisions. That would be inappropriate. I'm not asking for business advice. I'm asking for wisdom from someone who understands both agriculture and investment strategy. Victoria looked across the fields where Jack and Emma were checking irrigation lines, their easy partnership representing everything she valued about the life she'd chosen. Margaret, can I give you some personal advice instead? Of course. Visit some of the farms you're thinking about divesting. Not the corporate operations, but the family farms, the sustainable operations, the places where agriculture is still connected to community. Spend time with the people who work the land. Then make your decision based on what you learn. You think that would change my perspective? I think it changed mine. After ending the call, Victoria rejoined her family in the kitchen, where Emma was explaining her afternoon plans to test soil pH in the south field. Everything okay? Jack asked, noting her thoughtful expression. Just remembered why I love not being responsible for other people's business decisions anymore. That afternoon, while Emma worked in the south field and Jack repaired fence posts, Victoria found herself drawn to Sarah's original garden. 5 years of expansion had created something magnificent, a demonstration space that showcased heritage varieties, sustainable growing methods, and the beauty possible when agriculture served community rather than just profit. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena Vasquez, now regional manager for the community bank that had replaced First National Morrison Farm, featured in Sustainable Agriculture magazine. Thought you'd want to know. You've all come so far. Victoria smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought her from Manhattan boardrooms to Montana vegetable rows. The path hadn't been smooth or predictable, but it had led her home. Victoria, Emma called from the field. Come see this. Victoria walked toward her stepdaughter, who was kneeling beside a section of soil that looked different from the surrounding area. What am I looking at? Victoria asked. The pH here is perfect for growing heritage grains varieties that were common 100 years ago, but nearly extinct now. I think this might have been where my great-grandmother grew wheat before modern farming methods changed everything. Victoria studied the soil, seeing possibility where others might see only dirt. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we could restore some of the original varieties, create a heritage grain program for local bakers and restaurants. It would be another educational component plus a new revenue stream. Your father would be proud, would. All my parents would be proud, Emma corrected, including Victoria in the family legacy with casual certainty. As the sun set over Morrison Farm, Victoria reflected on the unexpected ways life could transform when people were brave enough to choose love over fear, community over isolation, growth over acquisition. She'd come to Montana as a predator and stayed as a protector. She'd lost a fortune and gained a family. She'd learned to plant things instead of acquiring them, to build relationships instead of just building wealth. Standing in Sarah's garden with soil under her fingernails and the sounds of home surrounding her, Victoria Sterling Morrison understood what real success looked like. Not what you accumulated, but what you nurtured. Not what you took, but what you gave. Not what you built for yourself, but what you left for others to continue. The farm would endure for another generation and maybe several more. The land would continue providing food and education. The buildings would shelter future families, and the love that had saved them all would grow stronger with each passing season. Victoria had finally learned the difference between having a life and living one. As Jack's hand found hers in the gathering twilight, she squeezed gently, grateful for second chances, small miracles, and the surprising ways that losing everything you thought you wanted could lead to finding everything you never knew you needed. Ready to go inside? Jack asked. Victoria looked around one more time at the fields, the gardens, the barn where Emma was securing equipment for the night, the house where warm light spilled from kitchen windows. Almost, she said, I just want to appreciate this moment a little longer. Because she'd learned that happiness wasn't a destination you reached, but a choice you made each day. And surrounded by the people and place she loved. Victoria Sterling Morrison chose happiness, chose gratitude, chose home, forever. If you believe in the power of love to transform lives and the courage to choose what matters most, subscribe for more heartwarming stories of redemption and second chances.